An exultant Benazir Bhutto at the end of 2007. Her days in the political wilderness have come to an end, and she returns to her country after 9 years in exile. She has every chance of becoming Prime Minister of Pakistan for the third time. Bhutto, a name that for 40 years has always evoked hope and death. In 1971, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was the first Prime Minister to be democratically elected. He was later hanged by the general who had deposed him in a military coup. He was the father of 4 children. Only Sanam, the youngest, who has refused to enter politics, is still alive. Shah Nawaz died, poisoned. Murtaza died, riddled with bullets. Benazir was the victim of a kamikaze assassin. Pakistan, the land of the pure, was created for Muslims at the time of the partition of the Raj, the Indian Empire. The country was split into 2 territories, separated by the 2,000 kilometers of neighboring enemy land. Whereas India was always governed by regularly elected prime ministers, Pakistan, since it was created, has spent more time under the grip of generals than under civilian rule. Ayub Khan, the first of those generals, seized power in 1958. Just after their independence, India and Pakistan clashed over the Kashmir region. 1965 saw a second war and a second defeat for Pakistan. The UN imposed a ceasefire and a peace agreement was signed in Tashkent in the Soviet Union. Seated next to Ayub Khan, the young Minister of Foreign Affairs was hostile to the peace conditions. His name was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Shortly afterwards, he was briefly imprisoned by Ayub Khan. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was born into a very wealthy family of Sindh landowners. In the province of Sindh, where the Bhuttos owned vast areas of land, peasants were treated like serfs. After attending secondary school in Bombay, Bhutto went to study political sciences at Berkeley in the US, and then to study law at Oxford in the UK. When he returned to his native Pakistan, he became a lawyer, but quickly realized that only politics could give free rein to his ambition. He started preparations to conquer power in 1967. He needed a party, and one of Bhutto's fellow travelers implemented the process. He was 30 years old at the time.
This is where Bhutto used to sit. I would drive and we'll go out for meetings and processions and whatnot. This is where People's Party was founded. Its first convention was held on 30th November 1967. Party's foundation documents were approved here, and the party was founded for democracy, socialism, and for transferring power to the people.
On the 7th of December 1970, universal suffrage took place for the first time. Bhutto's party took 81 seats in the west, but the Bengalis in the east, with a far more dense population, took 160 seats, and so the Prime Minister was to be Mujibur Rahman, a Bengali. This was out of the question for the West Pakistanis, who had always run the country up until then. The east, in the face of this injustice, revolted, and from the month of March, repression started. The powerful Pakistani army waged a veritable war against a handful of Bengali guerrillas secretly armed by India. The genocide lasted 9 months. 700,000 people died and millions of refugees fled to India. The entire world was horrified. It was the moment Indira Gandhi had been waiting for. She gave orders for the Indian army to intervene. 13 days later, Dhaka was liberated, and East Pakistan became independent under the name of Bangladesh, the land of Bengalis. Pakistan lost more than half its population, a humiliation that Bhutto refused before the Security Council in New York.
Impose any decision. Have a treaty worse than the Treaty of Versailles. Legalize aggression. Legalize occupation. I will not be a party to it. We will fight. We'll go back and fight. My country hearkens for me. Why should I waste my time here? You can take your Security Council.
A few days later, General Yahya Khan, responsible for the defeat, was forced to resign by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who became president and chief martial law administrator. He still had to convince the population that his country could survive the amputation of Bangladesh, and he gave his first televised speech.
We are facing the worst crisis in our country's life, a deadly crisis. We have to pick up the pieces, very small pieces, but we will make a new Pakistan. I will restore democracy. I have been vested with the powers of President and Chief Martial Law Administrator. I would not like to see martial law remain 1 day longer than necessary, 1 minute longer than necessary, 1 second longer than necessary. Pakistan, Zindabad.
He was a very, very, very well-read person, and he had a phenomenal memory, He had a phenomenal memory, and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto could, he could hold his own against anybody in the world, I have seen him, meeting high dignitaries and heads of government and heads of states. I mean, you felt proud of the man, the way he handled such meetings and the way how he performed, As a Pakistani, you really felt proud of him, you see,
The Bhuttos' family residence was at 70 Clifton in Karachi. Bhutto possessed the finest library in Pakistan, with 25,000 works. His culture was encyclopedic, and the library featured all areas of human knowledge. Naturally, the history and political analysis shelves were particularly well stocked, with a marked preference for one historical figure: Napoleon, a surprising tutelary figure for a disciple of democracy. Bhutto married Nusrat, who was of Iranian origin. They had 4 children. Each one of them was enrolled at Oxford University the day they were born. Dinner guests at the family home regularly included Zhou Enlai, Kissinger, and Gaddafi. The future looked bright for the privileged children of Karachi's most prominent couple. In June 1972, Bhutto travelled to Simla in India. With the war over, it was time for dialogue with Indira Gandhi. His elder daughter Benazir, a student in California, had come back home for the holidays, and she accompanied her father. At the age of 19, she saw the history of her country being written before her very eyes. Bhutto put an end to martial law, as he had undertaken to do, and provided his country with its first democratic constitution. He was president and would become prime minister. He made the televised announcement himself.
Today is a day of historic significance to all. Today we bid goodbye, finally and for all time, to the palace revolutions and military coups which plagued Pakistan for nearly 2 decades.
Addressing the population in English could only reach a very small Anglophone elite, and Bhutto knew that only Urdu would speak to the Pakistanis' hearts. It was the language of immigrants from India. As he was born in Sindh, he did not master Urdu. Despite this fact, or perhaps as a result of the awkwardness in speaking it, his speeches enchanted the people.
Zulfikar Ali Bhutto एक नहीं है, दो Zulfikar Ali Bhutto है, एक जो यहाँ खड़ा है और दूसरे आप, हर एक आप में से। सब में, इस खून में, इस बुत में खड़ा हूँ, दूसरा आपके रूह में, आपके जिस्म में, आपके बुत में मैं खड़ा।
He could have done anything. What could this anything be? He could have really modernized the country by destroying the landlords as a class, saying all the lands will be distributed. That is what Pakistan needed. He didn't do that. He could have transformed the education system of the country, using money that was available to build an education system which would educate every boy and girl in the country. That wasn't done. He could have created a strong health service. That wasn't done. And most importantly, he could have cut down the size of the military by half, reduced military expenditure, and attempted to reshape the country. He didn't do that. And so the legacy of his failure still haunts the country.
To court the good graces of the Islamist parties, Bhutto portrayed himself as a pious pilgrim in Mecca. It was Bhutto who made Islam enter the country as a political force. In 1974, in the cultural capital in Lahore, he organized the first Islamic conference. Surrounded by Gaddafi, Boumediene, Arafat and Faisal of Saudi Arabia, he wanted to promote Islamic socialism and restore pride and courage to Muslims the world over. A new chief of staff had to be appointed. Instead of appointing the highest-ranking general in the military hierarchy, Bhutto chose the sixth highest-ranking general, thinking that the insignificant and bigoted character would be entirely docile. In 1977, Bhutto's popularity had plummeted, as he had proved to be more of an autocrat than a democrat. His entourage, the secret services and other agents brazenly rigged the elections to give him a huge majority. Bhutto's party won 155 of the 220 seats. Before the puppet parliament, Bhutto took oath as prime minister for the second time without batting an eyelid.
I,
Zulfikar Ali Bhutto,
do solemnly swear
that
I am a Muslim
I am a Muslim
and believe in the unity
and believe in the unity and the oneness of Almighty Allah.
As a reaction to the travesty, demonstrations broke out all over the country, and Bhutto declared martial law. Workers went on strike, the people burned effigies of the man they had previously hero worshipped, and the country came to a standstill. Hundreds of people died. Bhutto then consented to meeting the leaders of the opposition. On July the 4th, he summoned a press conference at 2 o'clock in the morning to announce a fragile compromise. But it was too late. A rumor had spread around the capital. Zia had Bhutto arrested, but he was at his wits' end. His former benefactor now hated him. He had Bhutto released after 3 weeks, by which time it had become apparent that the arrest had served to make him popular once again.
The military knew if there was another election he would win, without any doubt. So they then sent emissaries to him saying, why don't you leave the country and go abroad? And here Bhutto said, I should leave my country and go abroad. Why? That was that side of him, courageous and arrogant. You ask me to leave my country? Why? You leave it.
Zia established the Sharia, corporal punishment for offenders, and stoning for adulterous women. He formed alliances with the ultra-Islamic groups. He never stopped affirming that he would leave power as soon as order had been established once more, but in fact, he was perfecting a strategy to remain.
We started out with an open arm, with an open hand of love and affection for the people of Pakistan. But then I find that at times the squeeze has to be applied. So now I'm trying to close the hand gradually, to apply the squeeze where it is necessary.
Zia found a way to get rid of Bhutto. 3 years before the coup d'etat, an elderly man had been killed in a shooting. According to the man's son, Bhutto was behind the incident. The case had been closed due to lack of evidence. Under Zia's orders, it was reopened. The trial took place before the Lahore High Court and was a parody of justice. The lack of proof was offset by corrupt police officers' testimonies. The judges were made to understand how they should deliver their verdict. Bhutto was condemned to death. His lawyers appealed, and the second trial took place before the Supreme Court. Care had been taken before the trial to resign the impartial judges. A direct telephone line was also set up between the head of the court and General Zia. As for Bhutto, although he was himself a lawyer, he was not granted permission to open his mouth. The defense did, however, manage to obtain the presence of outside observers, who were not authorized to speak either.
Je suis arrivé à Rawalpindi. Il y avait une atmosphère extraordinairement pesante. J'étais reçu avec une courtoisie tout à fait britannique. Les membres de la Cour suprême parlaient avec l'accent d'Oxford. Et en même temps, derrière les formes très respectées, très dans la grande tradition britannique, vous perceviez qu'il s'agissait purement et simplement de l'exécution d'un ordre politique. C'était un assassinat judiciaire. Alors, il y avait des avocats pakistanais extrêmement compétents. Et puis, nous étions rejoints le plus souvent par Benazir Bhutto, qui était à ce moment-là fort jeune, et dont les traits étaient ravagés par l'angoisse. Une jeune femme d'un caractère admirable, comme son père, qui fumait, je me souviens très bien, cigarette après cigarette, un état d'intensité passionnelle d'émotion et de nervosité extrême, mais maîtrisée. J'ai toujours pensé, quand je la voyais ainsi, que Zia retrouverait ensuite sur son chemin cette jeune femme, cette Antigone, et qu'entre Zia et elle, ce serait une lutte qu'on peut dire à mort.
The Supreme Court, under Zia's control, confirmed the verdict on the 23rd of March 1979. Gaddafi, the Shah of Iran, Giscard d'Estaing, Faisal of Saudi Arabia, the whole world wrote to Zia begging for clemency. In London, the Pakistani community rallied round. Murtaza and Shah Nawaz, Bhutto's two sons, fought to prevent their father's hanging.
We have received so many, requests from her foreign heads of state and heads of government that Zulfikar Ali's life should be spared, and this death sentence should not be carried out. You know what Ziaul Haq told me? He said, it is either Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's neck or it is my neck,
On the 4th of April 1979, at 2 o'clock in the morning, Ali Bhutto was hanged at Rawalpindi prison. Pakistan was in a state of shock, as were Bhutto's two sons in London.
Well, I don't want to say much. I came just to tell you that was a personal tragedy. And they've tried to break our father. They've tortured him for 2 years. They couldn't do that. They tried to ruin his political name, and now they've killed him. We have nothing to be ashamed of. They have buried a martyr today.
Benazir had seen her father in prison just before he was executed.
My father was very calm, and he talked of family matters. He talked of party matters, and I keep seeing his face. They asked at the end of the meeting, I said that I'd like to hug my father goodbye. They wouldn't even open the cell doors for me to kiss him goodbye.
Benazir had her father's body buried in his native village. But she was still to suffer more of Zia's hatred for the Bhutto clan. Zia's Pakistan was outlawed, but not for long. In December 1979, the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, and in the eyes of the US and their associates, Zia became an essential ally. The dollars came pouring in, as Zia supported the Afghan Mujahideen, who were fighting for what was referred to as the free world.
Why are Begum Bhutto and her daughter jailed now?
In the first case, they are not in jail. They are not in prison, they are detained. Because Mr. Begum Bhutto and the daughter of Mr. Bhutto tried to make the whole thing political. It was a criminal offense. What Mr. Bhutto was being charged was against a criminal, was for a criminal offense. It was not a political offense. But they had done so much to politicize this so that he could get away with this. I removed them from the scene and detained them.
As a baby, Benazir was nicknamed Pinky on account of her very pale complexion. She attended a convent school in Karachi before going to Harvard. She completed her studies at Oxford University. People there remembered her as an impulsive young lady who would jump into her bright yellow sports car, for example, and dash off to indulge a whim for her favourite ice cream. Benazir leapt from the world of her privileged upbringing straight into a world of violence and repression. She showed immense courage. Nothing got in her way, neither beatings nor cockroach-infested jails. Benazir was imprisoned for 6 years and her mother for 4. Rough treatment and deprivation had taken their toll on the women's bodies, and they were in need of medical care. In 1984, they went into self-exile in London. As she got off the plane, the West discovered a 30-year-old woman, physically exhausted, but with an iron will.
We have not left Pakistan. We have not come out as political refugees or sought political asylum. We are Pakistanis and we'll go back to Pakistan. That's our homeland. That's where we live and that's where we'll die.
Fighting from the inside was not the solution for Bhutto's sons, Murtaza and Shah Nawaz. Shortly after their father's execution, they left London for Kabul, where, with the help of the Soviets, they launched an armed movement, a rather inefficient one, between terrorism and romanticism. Their most noteworthy operation was the hijacking of an airliner during which a member of the Pakistani military was shot in cold blood. On the 18th of July 1985, Shah Nawaz, the younger Bhutto brother, was found dead, poisoned in his Cannes apartment in France. His Afghan wife was charged under French law for failure to render assistance. Some people suspected Zia was behind the incident, and still today his death remains a mystery. Benazir and her mother had him buried alongside his father. After 2 years in exile, Benazir Bhutto landed in Lahore on the 10th of April 1986. As for her father, 9 years earlier, a huge crowd had gathered to give her a triumphal reception. Zia, still in power, did not oppose her return, as he considered he had the country under his control. But who knows whether the fervour of the crowds did not revive some old fears in him. Benazir was also a strategist, and she knew full well that a woman could not envisage a public career on her own in Pakistan. The former Californian student agreed to an arranged marriage. Her husband was called Asif Zardari. His family ran cinemas in Karachi. His favorite pastimes were playing polo and disco dancing. A year later, their first child was born. It was a boy, and the parents named him Bilawal, the incomparable. Thanks to his alliance with the Islamist parties, General Zia was now convinced he could take power of the country. He declared the end of martial law. He now planned to beat Benazir Bhutto in free elections. But he was never to get the opportunity. On the 17th of August 1988, the plane that was carrying Zia, his entire general staff and the United States ambassador to Pakistan exploded in mid-flight. The list of his enemies was so long that even today his death remains a mystery. But what is clear is that Zia, who had claimed he would only intervene for a few months to lift the country out of chaos, had remained in power for just over 11 years. Genuinely free elections took place as scheduled. On the 2nd of December 1988, Benazir Bhutto became Prime Minister. She was 35 years old. A new era began as the chapter of dictatorship was well and truly over. For a great many Pakistanis, for her mother Nusrat and her husband Asif.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
मैं
Benazir Bhutto
सिद्ध के दिल से हल्फ उठाती हूँ कि मैं मुसलमान हूँ यकीन रखती हूँ.
But the president who had sworn her in had been a faithful servant of Zia's for years. And in the army, many generals were appalled at the idea of having to stand to attention before Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's daughter. So Benazir tried to win over the military. She tried to make a pact with the Islamists. She endeavored to convince her country. But she faced so many opposing forces, without counting her husband. She had appointed him as minister, but he was known in the country as Mr. 10%, as he always took a cut on any contract signed. "20 months after having been sworn in as Prime Minister, Bhutto was removed from office for nepotism and corruption. Nawaz Sharif, a Punjabi businessman and a protege of Zia's, replaced her. He hated the Bhuttos and initiated an inquiry, which sent Asif, Benazir's husband, to prison. But his management was not necessarily more honest, and he was removed from office in turn for corruption. He was replaced by Benazir. Benazir once again became Prime Minister for 3 years. Her husband went overnight from the straw mattress of a prison cell to the Minister for Investment's chair. In 1994, a journalist started inquiring into a business affair involving Benazir's husband, Zardari. The journalist was summoned to see Benazir Bhutto.
She behaved like a typical Eastern woman. She said, "Look, Zardari is innocent. He does not know that this is a dirty business. Actually, some dirty friends of Zardari, they are forcing my husband to become part of this deal." I said, "Okay, I will take care of your innocent husband." And that's how I started my investigation. Mr. Zardari is trying to make a very suspicious deal of submarines with some French. So I wrote an article in Jung newspaper. And the day my article was published in the newspaper, same afternoon, I was dismissed from my services.
At around the same time, a British journalist met Benazir Bhutto.
She was very much like interviewing Lady Thatcher. She dictated the way that the interview went. There was no question of a conversation. This was an opportunity for her to be making statements. And if you got in the way or tried to stop the flow, it was just a bulldozer. And I think that's the way she ran the government. And she was alone there, with one woman in a room of hundreds of men, and like Thatcher, with dispatching all the Conservative minions to do her will. That was very much the impression I got with Benazir.
Benazir had always had pro-American leanings. She knew exactly what to say to win over Congress in Washington.
Some claimed to fear revenge. Revenge against the murderers and the torturers. But ladies and gentlemen, democracy is the greatest revenge.
In Washington, D.C., they made her into a figure which was, not worshipped, but regarded as, this is the only princess of democracy we have in that part of the world, which, in my opinion, was completely mendacious.
All the things one would have liked her to do, set up schools, work on human rights, repeal the blasphemy laws, all the sorts of things that one would have expected a bright, Oxford and Harvard-educated, liberal Democrat to have tried to do, she failed to do.
In 1994, the country was drifting. Violence held political office and Karachi looked more like Beirut. It was in this end-of-reign atmosphere that Benazir's brother decided to break off his self-exile. Following the guerrilla warfare led from Kabul, Murtaza had taken up residence in Syria on Hafez al-Assad's invitation. He lived a quiet life there with his wife Ginwa, his daughter Fatima, and his young son Zulfikar. In late 1993, he decided to return to Pakistan. His daughter Fatima was 12 at the time.
We were living in Syria at the time, and my father had spent 16 years in exile before he returned to Pakistan. And he very much wanted to return once so-called democracy was restored in 1988. And his sister said, "Don't come back yet. It's not easy for me. I can't protect you. Please don't come back." But he very much wanted to.
In November 1993, Murtaza was arrested on the runway at Karachi airport, as his past record for terrorist activity against Zia had not been amnestied. His mother Nusrat, his wife and 2 children often went to see him during the 8 months he spent in prison.
My 5th one was called I Spy, one I actually got.
As for Benazir, she never visited her brother in Karachi prison. Murtaza had to struggle alone with the vagaries of the legal proceedings.
I have only Murtaza's word for it. I went and interviewed him in a recess of his trial at the back of the courtroom. Managed to get in and talk to him, and his mother was there. And he said that not a single note had passed between Benazir and he since he'd returned, and he wasn't expecting special treatment, but he was at least expecting justice. Instead, he maintained that she was making the court case against him go on as long as possible, so as to keep him effectively out of the running as a rival for the head of the PPP.
In Pakistan, it is the male who inherits, and many militants of the party supported Murtaza. On January 5, 1994, the anniversary of his father's assassination, while Murtaza was still in prison, the police opened fire on his supporters who were chanting his name. 3 people died. Bullets also just missed his mother Nusrat, and the gate of the Bhuttos' historical home was riddled with bullets.
They talk about democracy, but once they're seated, when they've got their tanks and arms and bayonets and guns, then they become dictators. And what was the crime of these boys who had died and who were shot dead? It's only because they were shouting slogan, G.A. Bhutto. Who is G.A. Bhutto? Bhutto is Prime Minister's father. G.A. Murtaza. Who's Murtaza? Prime Minister's brother. For this, they have to be shot dead.
Let's put the January incidents in perspective. Those amongst my brother's supporters are really not his supporters. They're foreign trained terrorists who have committed acts of murder, kidnapping, bank robbery.
As her mother continued to support Murtaza, Benazir removed her from her position as chairman of the party.
There can only be a reconciliation if she gives me back my chairmanship, not otherwise. And she's not prepared to give it back to me.
While he was still in Syria, Murtaza's wife and daughter had been campaigning on his behalf and had won him a seat at the Provincial Assembly of Sindh. As soon as he was freed, Murtaza founded a dissident party, which was significantly more to the left than his sister's party. His attacks against the government became increasingly violent.
This government which we have now, which is elected on, which got its votes on the blood of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, twice got its votes, twice came to power on his sacrifice, is absolutely directionless. It has no direction. It seems to be in a state of drift. It is corrupt to the core. Its only purpose seems to be to earn money by hook or by crook. I had recently mentioned that it is worse than, it's not a government, it is Ali Baba and 40 thieves.
This younger brother of mine, to whom I gave so much affection, who I looked after when he was young, and when I looked after all their homes and all their things, that they should then turn out and wish to hurt me and hit out at me, it's something which is incomprehensible.
I met them obviously in slightly different circumstances. She was the Prime Minister and he was in prison. And so, while Murtaza, who was clearly a rogue, but he was terrific, sort of good-humoured, funny, giggling, laughing, charming, clever man. It's the sort of guy you'd really like to hang out with, in a way that Benazir, you definitely would think twice about inviting for dinner, or certainly would only do it after you'd sort of, hired the grandest ballroom in the country to receive her.
Some of Benazir's supporters started spreading rumours that Murtaza was preparing to plant bombs in Karachi and that it was necessary to carry out a raid on the party's headquarters. Furious, Murtaza called a press conference.
कि अगर वो लीगल वारंट के साथ आए तो इस घर से कोई मज़ामत नहीं होगी, कोई रेजिस्टेंस नहीं होगा. लीगल वारंट के साथ अगर आए, वो लीगल वारंट के साथ आए, कोई इंटरफेयर नहीं करेगा उनसे. मेरा बैग तैयार है, हर वक्त के लिए तैयार है, मैं खुद आके उनके साथ बैठ जाऊंगा गाड़ी में. I challenge them to come and arrest me.
On the evening of the 20th of September, Murtaza was returning home after a meeting. He was only about 30 meters away from home when his car was stopped by police and was riddled with bullets. The 7 occupants of the car were killed instantly. Fatima and her mother heard the shots. When they went out into the street, it was teeming with policemen. They were told there were bandits in the area and were urged to go back inside their house. As the hours went by, they were beside themselves with worry.
Out of desperation, I called my aunt. I called the Prime Minister house in Islamabad, and the ADC came on the phone, very apologetic. Are you okay? Is everything all right? How is everything there? And I didn't know what he was talking about. I was 14 at the time. So I said, just please connect me to my aunt. So he didn't connect me to my aunt, he connected me to her husband, to Asif. And he came on the phone and I said, I'd like to talk to my aunt, please. He said, no, you can't. So I said, well, it's an emergency. If it's possible, I'd just like to have a word with her. And he said, no, she's hysterical right now. And there was crying in the background and it all sounded very strange. So I asked him, I said, what do you mean hysterical? He said, oh, don't you know? Your father's been shot.
Nusrat Bhutto had already buried her husband and younger son. She had now lost her elder son. One mystery of the Bhutto dynasty is this. Benazir wept deeply for her assassinated brother, but she used her authority as Prime Minister to prevent any inquiry into the circumstances of his death.
Murtaza realized very early that the marriage to Zardari was a disaster, and that Zardari's aim ultimately was to finish off the Bhuttos. Murtaza Bhutto's murder and assassination outside the Bhutto family home in Karachi was carried out on the orders of someone very high up in the government, and all the evidence points to Zardari and his special men, who did it. So Fatima on that, I think, when she accuses Zardari, is right.
At the beginning of her term of office, Benazir had taken care to nominate a friend, Farouk Ligari, to the position of president. But to the usual accusations of corruption levelled at her husband, those of murder were now added. He removed her from office. Just as during her previous dismissal, it was the leader of the opposition party, Nawaz Sharif, who became prime minister. He immediately gave orders to embassies all over the world to collect proof of Benazir's and Zardari's corruption. The charges came flooding in. They included misappropriation of public funds, money laundering, and commissions on arms deals. Pakistani judges, but also English, French, and Swiss ones, all wanted to try the couple, who had apparently clearly overlooked the distinction between private and state property. Zardari left his minister's office for a cell in Karachi prison, where he was to remain for 8 years. After the splendours of power, Benazir's life was now punctuated by paying prison visits. She spent the rest of her time pleading her cause before the Supreme Court. But whereas the end of her father's life had been decided there, she had to explain the embezzlement of millions of dollars. Zardari managed to be appointed senator, and in that capacity was authorized to leave his cell when the Senate was in session. This provided an opportunity for snatches of conversation in Parliament. Benazir too was afraid of being sent to prison. She left Pakistan in 1998 with her 3 children. A year later, she was sentenced in absentia to 5 years imprisonment and received an $8 million fine. She knew it would now be a while before she could return to her country. Her exile, during which she divided her time between London and Dubai, lasted 9 years. It was perhaps cold comfort, but she was still president of the party, and she ran it from a distance. She did not forget her martyrs at Larkana, and in the Bhutto stronghold had a replica of the Taj Mahal built above the tomb of her father and 2 assassinated brothers. In Islamabad in 1999, Pervez Musharraf, Pakistan's army chief, toppled Nawaz Sharif's government. Following the attacks of 9/11, the general and president swore allegiance to Washington.
The United States decided that it was essential to get a civilian government back again so that they had more legitimacy in Pakistan, and Benazir was in and out of the State Department. She was extremely worried, and she said, but there are all these cases of corruption against me and my husband. And the Americans said to her, when we have finished with you, you will be pure white clean.
You walk with me, look at what I'm reading. You see?
Benazir would be able to return to Pakistan. She gave a brief lesson in media training to her son, Bilawal. She considered it was never too early to learn the profession, and soon she would have a lot less time to devote to her heirs. The Americans obliged Musharraf to accept the agreement. He would remain president, but Benazir would be his prime minister. On the 18th of October 2007, Benazir finally left Dubai.
I feel very, very emotional coming back to my country. I dreamt of this day for so many months and years. I counted the hours, I counted the minutes and the seconds just to see this land, to see the grass, to see the sky. I feel so emotionally overwhelmed.
The party had fitted out a lorry so the people could see Benazir. The crowd was so dense it took 12 hours to travel the few kilometers. At midnight, an exhausted Benazir went inside the lorry to put the final touches to her speech. an action that was to save her life. "150 people died and 600 were injured. Benazir escaped miraculously. After that kind of welcome, other leaders may well have left the country forever. Benazir, on the other hand, threw herself into her electoral campaign for 2 months. The country was to hold elections 2 weeks later, and she had every chance of becoming Prime Minister for the 3rd time. Her agreement with Musharraf did not last. She openly accused him of being a dictator following his declaration of a state of emergency. As a retaliatory measure, he placed her under house arrest twice. Later, in Rawalpindi, Islamabad's twin town, it would have been impossible to have a quiet game of cards at Liaquat Bagh, the public garden where so many public political meetings were held. They were called Jalsa. The Jalsa went very well. Like her father, Benazir gave thousands of them. That was what Benazir had missed the most during her exile, the contact with her people. And on the day of that particular Jalsa, she did not intend to do without that contact, even if from all sides she had been warned about the risks. Benazir Bhutto died on the 27th of December 2007. She was buried the next day in the mausoleum she had had built, amidst a great public outpouring of grief. All the Bhuttos were united for the occasion.
ये चीज़ मैडम उर्दू में भी प्लीज़ के मोहतरमा कोई मेमोरीज आपको
पुराना मेमोरीज है और अच्छा मेमोरीज था बस now अभी we will remember her always as a shaheed. That's now how we remember her.
Will you come in politics as well? Thank you. Thank you.
2 days after the funeral, politics was back in the foreground. At his home, Asif Zardari had just read out Benazir's will to the party leaders. In this will, she had appointed her son Bilawal president of the party. He was 19 at the time. To enable him to finish his studies first, her husband Asif would take over during the interim.
My mother always said, democracy is the best revenge.
Like I said, Murtaza Benazir Bhutto talks from her grave. Party doesn't need, I don't need, nobody needs to point any fingers. She's pointing.
In an email addressed to an American friend just a few days before her death, Benazir wrote that if she was killed, Musharraf would be behind it.
One copy, therefore I shall not give it to you.
The day after her killing, President Musharraf's spokesman gave the official version. Benazir Bhutto was killed by the Taliban. The force of the bomb had thrown her against the lever of the sunroof.
So let it be very clear that there was no bullet that hit Murtaza Benazir Bhutto. It was the lever. The lever was, hit, and that caused the fracture into her skull.
The very next day, mobile phone images contradicting the official story were published. There were also the personal accounts of the occupants of the car. Benazir's secretary and friend for 24 years gave one such account.
इन लोगों के सारे लोगों के सामने ये सब कुछ हुआ मैंने उनको एकदम जब उठाया मैंने कहा बीबी बीबी तो पूरे उनके सारे राइट साइड से बहुत बुरी तरह खून निकल रहा था और बिल्कुल वो अनकॉन्शियस थी, बिल्कुल एक यानी कुछ भी वो मुझसे लफ्ज़ नहीं बोली और बिल्कुल अनकॉन्शियस थी। अब हम जैसे ही वो गिरी और एकदम मेरा ख्याल है 4 या 5 सेकंड का वक्फा हुआ कि बम ब्लास्ट हुआ, जिससे पूरी हमारी गाड़ी शेक हुई। बस हमने बीवी के हम एकदम चीखना शुरू हो गए और बीवी को हॉस्पिटल ले जाने के लिए।
90 minutes after the attack, the authorities ordered the fire brigade to clean the spot where it had taken place with a fire hose. Many people believed the terrorists could not have acted alone, and suspicion fell on the army. Musharraf denied all responsibility, as at the time of the murder, he was no longer head of the army. In November 2007, the Supreme Court had obliged him to choose between the army and the presidency. He therefore handed over command to a member of his inner circle. It was therefore the latter leader who was in charge of the army's secret services, an unassailable fortress in the state machine. But how could the army forsake the state? The murder of Benazir Bhutto does not stand much chance of being solved.
This seems to be the tragedy of Pakistan, that we are trapped in a fatal cycle. You have popular political leader killed, military back. People get fed up with the military, they get rid of the military. Politicians come in, first one group of politicians, then another. They make money, they are corrupt, nothing changes. The military comes back. Then the military does something stupid, it becomes unpopular again. Then people look forward to the politicians coming back. But this cycle, who will break this cycle?
On the 9th of September 2008, at the age of 53, Asif Zardari became the 11th president of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, under the emotional gaze of his 3 children, Bakhtawa, Bilawal and Asifa, and through the tears of Sanam Bhutto, who had seen her father, 2 brothers and sister die.
I do solemnly swear. I, Asif Ali Zardari, do solemnly swear.
Zardari's government is based on nothing except that he had a connection to a Bhutto. It's based on the blood of Benazir. It's based on the blood of the Bhutto family, some of which we believe is on Zardari's hands, you know. He's an accused in my father's murder case. And he was acquitted in the middle of the trial. Why is he still in power? Because some countries won't let them go.
Your Excellencies, I come before you today in the name of my late wife, Shaheed Mohtarama Benazir Bhutto. I am a husband who has seen the mother of his children give her life fighting the menace of terrorism.
Immediately after his mother's funeral and his nomination as president of the family party, Bilawal returned dutifully to Oxford to continue his history studies. Like a film star, he had to walk in front of the paparazzi, for he was now the guardian of that mythical name, Bhutto.
These 6 letters make such a difference in Pakistan, that people who don't have the lineage take it, or they claim it. And I think it means something. I think it means that there are no other qualifications for power in this country. It's not about merit. It's not about your political ideas. It's not about your commitment to values like democracy, like secularism, like liberalism, like human rights. It's only about 6 letters.
The Prime Minister and President have been members of the Bhutto party for 3 years now, and no real inquiry into Benazir's death has been opened. Activists who denounced it have been expelled from the party. Throughout the year, the faithful come and pay their respects at the tombs in the Bhutto mausoleum, while at the highest level of the state, the prevailing idea is that it is now time to forget and to keep silent. In people's memories and hearts, Benazir's tragic death wiped out her past transgressions. and cynics have understood that the name Bhutto can still open the doors of power in Pakistan.